Under the bruised skies of a war-torn planet, David Calloway's life as a field medic was about to take an unexpected turn. The front lines had pushed far into the craggy landscapes of Rathos Prime, where human and alien forces clashed with terrifying intensity. Amidst the chaos, David had become adept at saving lives under fire, his hands skilled and steady even as the ground shook beneath him. That day, however, the ground shook not from artillery, but from something far larger. The sound was deafening, a roar that sliced through the cacophony of battle, a crashing, screeching testament to destruction from above. David instinctively ducked, covering his head as he scanned the skies. His eyes caught the trail of a massive object, a spacecraft, burning through the atmosphere like a fallen star. It hit the ground with an impact that sent shock waves through the air and earth alike. David was on his feet in an instant, medical kit in hand, his survival instincts momentarily overridden by his duty to aid those in need. The crash site was a mere half-mile from his position, hidden by a ridge lined with the twisted bodies of ancient trees. He ran. As he approached, the scene that unfolded was something out of a nightmare. The alien craft was unlike any he had seen before, sleek and dark, its surfaces reflecting the dying light with a metallic sheen. It was broken open like a shattered egg, its contents exposed to the harsh environment of Rathos Prime. Smoke and steam hissed from the wreckage, and David slowed to a cautious approach, scanning for movement. His training had prepared him for many things, but nothing quite like this. The air was thick with the acrid smell of burning electronics and scorched metal. Then he saw her. Amidst the debris, a figure stirred, tall, imposing, with skin that shimmered like the night sky filled with stars. She was an alien warrior, clad in armor that looked forged from the shadows themselves, broken in places from the impact. As she pushed herself up from the wreckage, her movements were labored, pained. David stepped forward, his medical instincts kicking in. "Hey, you need help," he called out, his voice firm yet cautious as he approached her. The alien warrior turned her head sharply, her eyes, vivid and violet, locking onto him with an intensity that froze him in his tracks. She studied him for a moment, her gaze piercing yet not hostile. "I require assistance," she said, her voice a low, melodic growl. Her command of his language was rough but understandable. David nodded, approaching slowly, his hands raised to show he meant no harm. "I'm a medic. I can help you," he reassured her, his voice steady despite the adrenaline that surged through his veins. She nodded weakly, collapsing to her knees. Her armor clinked softly, a stark contrast to the harsh, jagged sounds of the battlefield beyond the ridge. As he reached her side, David quickly assessed her injuries. She was bleeding, a dark fluid seeping from beneath her armor. With careful movements, he began to apply pressure to the wounds, his kit open and supplies ready. "Why did you help me?" she asked, her voice tinged with curiosity and something else, something like wonder. "Because it's the right thing to do," David replied simply, focusing on his task. "Can you tell me your name?" "Azara," she said after a pause, watching his every move with sharp eyes. David smiled reassuringly, working quickly to stabilize her condition. "Hang in there, Azara. I've got you." As he administered emergency care, the sounds of battle faded into the background, replaced by the harsh breaths of the alien warrior and the steady, determined voice of the human medic. Together, they were no longer just figures in a vast conflict, but two beings connected by a thread of shared humanity in the face of adversity. And as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows over the rugged landscape, David knew that this was only the beginning. As night enveloped Rathos Prime, the glow from the wreckage cast eerie shadows over the makeshift medical bay David had established. Azara, now slightly stabilized, lay on a salvaged panel, her breathing labored but evening out. The cool night air mixed with the smell of ionized metal and alien blood, an unusual, metallic tang that David tried not to focus on. "Your technology," Azara murmured, her eyes flickering under heavy lids. "It is primitive, yet effective?" David chuckled softly, continuing to monitor her vitals on his basic scanner. "It gets the job done," he replied. "How do you feel?" "Better than I should," she admitted, shifting slightly. The movement caused her pain, evident from the sudden tension in her features. Your care is proficient. I'm grateful. Her gratitude seemed to come hard for her, as if admitting to needing help was a breach of her own code. David sensed a depth of pride and strength in her that was typical of warrior castes he had read about in the briefings. Why were you alone in that craft? David asked, his curiosity overcoming his professional demeanor. The quiet of the night, broken only by distant skirmishes, seemed to invite more personal dialogue. Azara's eyes hardened for a moment, and she turned her gaze towards the remnants of her ship. I was on a mission of great importance, she said slowly, weighing each word. My ship was attacked by a faction that does not desire peace. I crashed during my escape. David processed this information, noting the strategic implications. And this mission, he ventured, does it involve your people making contact with ours? It does, she confirmed. I was a negotiator. Our galaxy is on the brink of a war that could consume all. My goal was to seek alliances, to prevent the spread of chaos. Realizing the gravity of what she shared, David nodded solemnly. Then we need to get you back to your people. You need more than I can provide here. Azara attempted to sit up, wincing as she did so. Oh. My mission changes now, because of you. I have witnessed your compassion, your bravery. These are qualities my people respect. You must come with me. You must help me convince them. The proposal struck David with the weight of a new responsibility he hadn't anticipated. He was a medic, not a diplomat. Yet, the earnestness in Azara's eyes compelled him to consider her request seriously. If I go with you, he started slowly, what happens then? How do I help you? You will be a testament to your people's potential as allies, she explained. Your actions speak louder than any formal treaty could. Besides, your skills will be needed. David looked out into the dark, where the remnants of his old life lay scattered by war. Then he looked back at Azara, her formidable presence softened by pain yet strengthened by resolve. All right, he agreed, his decision firming. I'll go with you. But first, we need to make sure you can travel. Over the next few hours, David worked to prepare for their departure. He gathered supplies, secured additional medical provisions, and readied himself for a journey that went beyond anything he had imagined when he first landed on Rathos Prime. Azara, in turn, instructed him on the protocols of her people, preparing him for the challenges of interstellar diplomacy. As dawn broke, casting light on the scarred landscape, they were ready. Together, they set out toward an uncertain future, bound by a newfound alliance that might just tip the scales towards peace. But as they left the safety of the makeshift camp, both knew the path ahead would be fraught with more than just physical dangers. As David and Azara made their way across the rugged terrain of Rathos Prime, the rising sun cast long, stark shadows against the scarred earth. The remnants of battle, burnt-out vehicles, shattered weaponry, and the occasional unburied soldier told a silent tale of the planet's suffering. David kept a steady pace, his eyes scanning the horizon while his mind turned over the magnitude of his unexpected role. Azara, though weakened from her injuries, moved with a quiet determination. Her gaze was frequently on the sky, alert for any sign of pursuit or danger from above. We will rendezvous with my unit 3 clicks northwest from here, Azara explained, her voice low to avoid any unwanted eavesdropping by potential hidden enemies. They will not expect me to bring a human, but your presence will be my responsibility. David nodded, feeling the weight of his presence in this alien conflict. His medical bag bounced against his hip with each step, a constant reminder of his initial purpose on this world. They moved through a narrow ravine, the rocks providing a natural cover from aerial surveillance. Here, Azara paused, her hand going to a panel on her wrist. With a few swift taps, she activated a device that emitted a soft, pulsing light. This will mask our thermal signatures, she said, noting David's curious look. Stealth is now our priority. The terrain began to change as they traveled, becoming increasingly barren. The soil turned to sand, and rocky outcrops were replaced by dunes. It was a landscape that seemed untouched by the war, but its desolate nature presented new challenges. Suddenly, Azara halted, her hand raising in a fist, signaling David to stop. Her eyes narrowed as she scanned the horizon, David followed her gaze but saw nothing. "What is it?" he whispered. "Something? Or someone has altered this area. These dunes, they are not naturally formed. They're concealing something," she murmured, her voice tense with suspicion. Proceeding with caution, they skirted the edge of the largest dune. As they passed, the ground beneath them shifted unexpectedly, revealing a concealed hatch. Azara was swift, pulling David back as a group of armed figures emerged, their weapons trained on them. David's heart raced, his hand instinctively going for his medical kit, an absurd reaction in the face of armed hostility. Yet before he could utter a word, Azara stepped forward, her posture commanding. "We seek passage," she announced in a clear, authoritative tone. "I am Azara of the Tailrock Fleet, and this is my ally under the rights of Frasha." The leader of the group, an imposing figure with scales that glittered under the sun, lowered his weapon slightly. "Azara, your name is known, but why bring a human into our midst?" "He is with me, and his skills have saved my life," she responded, her tone unwavering. "He is under my protection, and I vouch for his intentions." There was a tense pause, the air thick with suspicion and the unsaid. Then, slowly, the leader nodded, signaling his group to lower their weapons. "Very well. But he remains your responsibility. Come, we will take you to the council." Relieved but still on high alert, David followed Azara and their new escorts. As they descended into the underground facility hidden beneath the dunes, he realized the full complexity of the world he had stepped into. Here, beneath the surface, the real battles were fought in shadows and whispers, with allies who could turn foes at the hint of betrayal. Their path led them through a series of winding tunnels illuminated by bioluminescent panels, opening into a vast chamber where a council of various alien representatives sat. Azara stepped forward, her voice echoing in the cavernous space as she introduced David, not just as a medic, but as a symbol of potential unity. David, standing beside her, felt the eyes of countless alien beings upon him, each one measuring his worth and intent. It was a far cry from the battlefields he was used to, yet here, in this underground assembly, the stakes felt just as high. In the cavernous chamber, the council's scrutiny was palpable. The representatives were a mosaic of the galaxy's diversity. Some bore thick hides, others shimmered with translucent skin, and a few were cloaked entirely in robes that whispered with their every movement. Their eyes, an array of colors and shapes, all fixed on David with an intensity that made him acutely aware of his outsider status. Azara stood firm and unyielding beside him, her stature regal even in the dim light of the council chamber. She began to speak, her voice carrying across the cavern. "Esteemed leaders, I present David Calloway, a medic of Earth. His actions have shown honor and compassion, embodying principles that align with the Frasha, the sacred right of protection and alliance." A murmur rippled through the assembly as Azara recounted the events leading to their unlikely alliance, her words painting a picture of their encounter and the ensuing journey to the council. David noticed the subtle shifts in the council's demeanor as Azara spoke, skepticism mixed with curiosity. When she concluded, the room fell into a heavy silence, broken only by the low hum of the bioluminescent lights. Then, a figure at the center of the council, clad in deep blue robes that seemed to absorb light, rose. This was High Counselor Verex, a being whose face was a mask of fine, dark scales and whose eyes glittered like cold stars. "Azara of Tailrock, you ask us to consider a human as an ally, a species only recently encountered and not yet fully understood." Verex's voice was smooth, carrying a tone of intrigue rather than dismissal. "What assurance can you give that this alliance will not endanger our coalition?" Azara responded with the precision of a seasoned diplomat. "High Counselor, the assurances I offer are not merely in words but in deeds. David's intervention saved my life, and his skills as a healer can be of great benefit to our efforts. Earth may be young in the arena of galactic politics, but they possess a unique blend of resilience and ingenuity." David felt every gaze upon him as Verex contemplated Azara's words. The High Counselor then turned those piercing eyes towards him. "Human, David Calloway, what is your understanding of our conflicts, and where do you stand in this galaxy of turmoil?" David swallowed, aware that his next words might tip the scales in ways he could hardly imagine. "I am just a medic," he began, his voice steady despite the tremor he felt. "I don't claim to understand all the complexities of your conflicts, but I know about helping those in need, about fixing what is broken, whether it's a body or, potentially, a treaty. If my presence here can help forge an understanding or aid in healing, then that is where I stand." A soft, approving hum came from one corner of the chamber, and David noticed a few nods among the council members. Verex sat back down, his expression unreadable, and whispered to a fellow counselor whose luminescent eyes flicked between David and Azara. Another figure rose, this one with skin that seemed woven from light itself. "And what of your people, David Calloway? Will they stand with you? Are they prepared to enter a coalition that spans the stars?" David hesitated, aware of the enormity of the question. "I represent only myself here," he admitted. "But I believe in my people's capacity for growth and understanding. I will advocate for peace and collaboration, and I believe my leaders will listen." As the discussion unfolded, David realized he was no longer just a medic. He was a symbol, a bridge between his world and the vast, unknown reaches of the galaxy. His heart raced with a mixture of fear and exhilaration as he faced the council, ready to play his part in shaping the future. The council chamber buzzed with low conversations after David's declaration. Some members seemed to lean into the possibility of a new, promising alliance, while others maintained a veneer of skepticism. The debate was paused as Verex called for a recess, a time for reflection and further discussion among the council members without the direct influence of their guests. Azara guided David to a small antechamber where they could speak freely. "You spoke well," she said, her tone imbued with respect. "It's rare they hear such sincerity." David managed a wry smile, feeling the weight of his words hang over him like a specter of future commitments. "I just hope it helps," he replied. "But I'm no politician, I'm out of my depth here." "You underestimate the power of authenticity, David," Azara remarked. "In politics, it's as rare as it is invaluable. Many here are weary of perpetual conflict. Your perspective, your fresh approach to old problems, it's refreshing." Their conversation was interrupted by a soft chime. The door slid open to reveal a council aide, a slight figure with iridescent skin and eyes that seemed to shift in hue with their mood. "The council requests your return," they said, voice melodious and calm. As they re-entered the chamber, David sensed a shift in the atmosphere. The previous tension seemed somewhat diffused, replaced by a cautious curiosity. Verex resumed his position at the center of the semicircle of council seats. "The council has deliberated," Verex began, his voice echoing slightly in the still air of the chamber. "We find merit in the proposal of an alliance, but such decisions cannot be made hastily. However, we are prepared to initiate a trial basis for cooperation." David listened, heart pounding, as Verex continued. "Azara of Tailrock will be appointed as an ambassador to Earth, with David Calloway serving as her liaison. Together, you will establish preliminary dialogues between our peoples." A murmur of agreement circulated around the room, not without a few dissenting whispers. David glanced at Azara, whose expression was unreadable, but he could sense her tension. "This trial will not only test the viability of an alliance but also the commitment of both parties to peace and mutual understanding," Verex added, locking eyes with David. "Do you accept this charge, knowing the responsibilities and risks it entails?" David took a deep breath, aware that his answer would propel him further into uncharted territories. "I accept," he said firmly. "I believe in what we're trying to build here." "And I, as well," Azara chimed in, her voice strong and clear. Verex nodded, a gesture of approval. "Then let this mark the beginning of a new chapter in our shared histories. May it lead to lasting peace." The council then proceeded to outline the terms of their agreement. David and Azara were to return to Earth to facilitate the first official communications. They would be accompanied by a small delegation from the council to observe and assist in the diplomatic process. As the meeting adjourned, council members approached to offer their cautious well wishes. The delegate with luminescent skin, who David learned was named Thyril, seemed particularly interested in Earth's culture. "Your world must be quite different from ours," Thirl remarked, their tone laced with genuine curiosity. It is, David agreed. But I think you'll find that our core values are not so different. Azara and David exited the chamber, stepping back into the broader corridors of the underground facility. The reality of their mission was settling in, a mix of opportunity and overwhelming responsibility. David felt the enormity of it all, the political maneuvering, the potential cultural clashes, and the simple human and alien element that underpinned everything. But as they made their way to their temporary quarters to prepare for the journey to Earth, David felt a burgeoning hope. Maybe, just maybe, they could thread the needle of diplomacy and carve out a path to a peaceful future. As David and Azara prepared for their departure to Earth, the base around them buzzed with a mixture of excitement and skepticism. Supplies were gathered, and the diplomatic delegation was briefed on Earth's cultural norms and environmental needs. Thirl, taking a particular interest in human customs, asked David countless questions, ranging from social etiquette to governmental structures. Do humans have a unified government, or are there factions? Thirl inquired as they inspected the transport vessel, a sleek ship that gleamed under the hangar lights. David chuckled lightly. It's complicated. We have multiple governments and plenty of factions. It's part of what makes diplomacy on Earth challenging. Azara, overseeing the loading of medical and communication equipment, joined the conversation. It will be crucial for our delegation to understand these complexities. Misunderstandings could jeopardize our mission. The day of departure arrived quickly. The delegation, including David and Azara, boarded the vessel, which was designed not only for interstellar travel but also to accommodate the varied physiological needs of its passengers. The crew was a mix of species, each member specially chosen for their expertise and ability to operate in multi-species environments. As the ship lifted off from Rathos Prime, David felt a pang of nostalgia mixed with apprehension. He watched the planet shrink behind them, its war-scarred surface a stark reminder of what was at stake. During the journey, Azara took time to brief the delegation more thoroughly on human behavior and politics. Humans value individualism but are also bound by numerous societal and cultural ties, she explained. Their reactions can be unpredictable, and their politics are deeply influenced by local and personal histories. David added, it's also worth noting that humans are generally wary of outsiders, especially those from other worlds. The first impression will be critical. The journey through space was uneventful, but the tension grew as Earth came into view, a blue and green orb suspended in the black sea of space. The ship's approach was carefully planned to avoid any military escalations. Their arrival had been pre-communicated to Earth's United Nations, which had agreed to host the initial meetings. Landing procedures were initiated, and the ship touched down on a private platform at the UN headquarters in New York City. The delegation was met by a group of human diplomats and a small contingent of media, their cameras flashing as they captured the historic moment. David stepped out first, followed by Azara and the rest of the delegation. He greeted the human representatives with a nod and a smile, trying to bridge the vast cultural gap with simple human warmth. We come in peace, with hopes of building a lasting friendship between our peoples, David announced to the assembly, his voice broadcasted around the world. Azara then spoke, her command of English impeccable and her tone resonant. Today marks a new beginning, one we hope will lead to greater understanding and cooperation. The human diplomats welcomed them formally, expressing cautious optimism. The initial interactions were stiff but polite, each side carefully navigating the uncharted waters of interstellar diplomacy. Over the following days, meetings were held to discuss terms of engagement, cultural exchanges, and potential collaboration in technology and medicine. David found himself in a unique position, translating not just words but also intentions and emotions, trying to find common ground between his own kind and his new allies. Despite the challenges, there were moments of lightness, shared meals where delegates from both sides attempted to use each other's eating utensils, resulting in laughter and, more importantly, a shared human moment. Through these small interactions, David realized the universal truth that underpinned all their efforts, regardless of origin, being sought connection, understanding, and peace. This realization fueled his hope that despite the complexities ahead, a path towards a united future was possible. In the bustling atmosphere of the UN headquarters, the delegation's efforts to forge a new path of cooperation intensified. David and Azara worked tirelessly, facilitating sessions that ranged from formal negotiations to informal cultural exchanges. Each day brought new challenges, but also new insights into the potential for a harmonious future. One afternoon, in a quiet garden on the UN grounds, Azara and David met to discuss the progress of their mission. The garden, with its serene paths and flowering plants, offered a momentary escape from the high stakes of their diplomatic efforts. "We are making headway, but we must be patient," Azara advised, her eyes reflecting the greenery around them. "Cultural integration takes time, and trust is built slowly." David nodded, understanding her point all too well. "The tech and medical collaborations have been well received, though," he added, a note of optimism in his voice. "And the cultural curiosity on both sides is promising." "Yes, the interest in Earth's art and music has opened more doors than I anticipated," Azara agreed, smiling. "And the human fascination with our spatial navigation technology has been equally enlightening." Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Thiril, who approached with an air of excitement. "The council back home has sent word. They're impressed with the reports. They've agreed to extend the mission and are considering a permanent embassy on Earth." David's eyes widened. "That's incredible news. It's more than we hoped for at this stage." "It is," Azara confirmed. "And they want us to continue leading the efforts here." "David, your role has been instrumental." As they absorbed the weight of their responsibilities, the reality of their situation settled in deeper. They were not just diplomats on a temporary assignment, they were pioneers of a new era. The next weeks were a whirlwind of activity. The announcement of the potential embassy sparked a flurry of media attention and public interest. David found himself speaking at various venues, from academic institutions to global forums, explaining the goals and benefits of the alliance. Azara, meanwhile, focused on deepening the strategic partnerships, securing agreements that would allow for shared advancements in technology and environmental conservation, a testament to the mutual benefits of their cooperation. Finally, the day came for the official signing of the treaty that would establish the first interstellar embassy on Earth. The ceremony was held in the General Assembly Hall, filled with representatives from around the world and beyond. The air was thick with anticipation and the sense of a historic moment unfolding. David and Azara stood together at the podium, their speeches reflecting the journey they had embarked upon, highlighting the challenges overcome and the hopes for the future. Cameras flashed and the assembly applauded as leaders from both sides signed the documents, sealing their commitment. After the ceremony, as the hall slowly emptied, David and Azara had a moment to themselves, looking out over the now quiet chamber. "We've started something bigger than either of us," David remarked, his voice a mixture of awe and fatigue. "Yes, a bridge between stars," Azara added. "Who would have imagined?" Their shared laughter echoed softly in the empty hall, a sound of joy and relief. As they left the building, walking side by side, the setting sun cast long shadows behind them, symbolizing the long road ahead but also the limitless possibilities. Together, they had laid the groundwork for a future where humanity and their new alien allies could explore the stars as partners, learning from each other and growing together in a universe that suddenly seemed a little smaller, a little friendlier, and filled with hope.